Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Always an honor, a delight to be talking with prolific author, uh, educator, and I believe current grand babysitter, Michael Jan Friedman. Michael, thank you for joining.
Sure, my pleasure as always.
Yeah, glad to have you. Glad to have you. I know that we're talking about your collaboration with Christopher D. Abbott, who was just on the show not too long ago, and we're talking about the work of Sherlock Holmes, the Southwark Stigmata, I believe. Did I say that correctly? Southwark?
Probably not. Um, I
Probably not.
I screw it up all the time, and I look at Chris and he goes, "Yeah, no, not exactly. It's something like Southwark
Southwark. Southwark.
Stigmata,
Okay.
something like that. But
Yeah,
it looks
yeah.
good.
I imagine he sounds so good when he says it too.
He does. He sounds great because he's British, so
Yes, yes.
he knows how to say it. But the important thing to know is not necessarily how to say it, but that it's a slum
Hmm.
uh, in London, particularly in Victorian times. And uh, the book starts off with a body being found in that slum. There's no real impetus to do a thorough investigation. So it kind of, oh, well, it must have been a mugging of some kind or a little bit of revenge, and nobody's really going to pursue it. But Holmes does. He's just kind of starting out in his career. He hasn't achieved the reputation yet that he will achieve, and so it starts out there, and then it goes on into a time frame that where we expect to see Holmes. So it really takes place in two different time frames.
Nice, nice. What were the challenges of writing that way, especially thinking about kind of the two time frames, getting the early kind of reputation building of the character, and then allowing him to grow through the project?
Well, it wasn't so much a challenge as a delight, to be
Oh,
honest with
nice,
you.
nice.
We really, for instance, Inspector Bradstreet, who shows up in some of the Conan Doyle stories, is um, is in it, and he's in it in that first part, and he and Holmes have a kind of a relationship there, but it changes a lot later on after they've had uh, successes together. And and so it's kind of cool to see Holmes with somebody that we recognize as one of his regular allies, but he's not a regular ally yet at that point. And so it's fun. It's fun to and you can play off uh, you can bounce off some walls that have been established, come up with some interesting ironies. So it's fun, more than a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. I imagine you have to immerse yourself in the work of Arthur Conan Doyle, and Christopher D. Abbott has written a lot of Sherlock Holmes material too. So this is probably something that you've regularly been steeped in, I would imagine.
Well, he's steeped in it. I'm sort of a babe in the woods. I'm used to writing about established characters and and so on, and in various licensed universes like Star Trek and Aliens, Predator, and uh, DC
DC
superheroes,
Comics.
Marvel
Hmm.
superheroes. So Wolfman. So I'm used to that, and I'm used to handling an established body of work, respecting it and finding ways to further it. But Chris is really the Holmes expert. And it's great to have somebody, you can bounce off something and say, for instance, I have Holmes staring out the window at one point, and I contacted Chris and I said, "So what's across the street?"
Mhm.
And he had an answer. He
Wow.
said, "Well, here's a video. Here's a couple of videos for you to look at, and there's your answer." Now he goes, depending on the time of day and the time of year and so on, um, we can we can we can change it a little bit here and there, but that there you go.
Yes. And look who just appeared across the street. Christopher, we were just talking about you. Welcome. Welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes.
Excellent.
Uh,
Hi, I'm good to be here.
Glad to have you. We've started recording. We were just talking about a little bit of this story world, the challenges of it, and a little bit of background on the story, as well as the correct pronunciation of the title. So this is Sherlock Holmes, the
Southwark.
South. There it was. Stigmata. I've got Stigmata. If you've got me for the rest of it.
Yes, yes, it's an odd sounding word, isn't it? Southwark.
I
As
like
as
it though.
often as often as Chris has instructed me on how to say it, I still screw it up.
This is the collaboration. This is the community. So beyond a little bit of the background of the story, we were just talking about how you have this deep knowledge of Sherlock Holmes, and that the two of you have had this conversation as you've been creating. What was the spark for this idea and this book?
Well, Chris has done great work and prolific work in his Watson Chronicles. And first, I read them, and then he invited me to take part in a anthology of Watson Chronicles, and I did that a few times, but I came up with an idea that was really too big to be just a story in an anthology. And I was tempted to, I had worked alongside Chris, but never actually worked with him. And so this was very tempting in a lot of ways. And I called him and I said, what if we were to work on something together? And to my everlasting gratitude, he said yes.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't I? First of all, um, Mike's a fantastic writer in his own right and hugely knowledgeable. But some of our best, I guess, we're giving away some of the little trade secrets, but some of our best conversations have occurred when we were driving to and from. Say for Far Point or Shore Leave conventions, where we would discuss these stories and ideas and where we were going with certain things, and that's where, for me, the first sort of essences of this was born in the conversation we were having, and then we sort of come back to it later, and then we really began to narrow it down. But yeah, that it was a really interesting opportunity because I had written alongside, as Mike said, a few authors, including Mike, and but I've never a full-on collaborative 50-50 full partnership type thing. It was so this has been a great experience and still continues to be.
I know a little bit about the process because, Chris, we talked before, but I'm curious how that process evolved. And for listeners who didn't get to hear a bit about it, anything that you'd like to share about how you develop the process between one another?
Well, every collaboration is different. I've had great collaborations. I've actually also had some poor ones that I wish hadn't happened. But they're all, even the successful ones, take place in different ways. I've worked with other writers where we come up with an outline and then work simultaneously. And then at the end, one of us does a polish and voila. But I think in this case, it was more complex, and it didn't really lend itself to a division of labor where we could work simultaneously. And we had the luxury of time. So what we're doing is Chris wrote the first part, and I commented on it. And now I'm writing the next part, and he'll be commenting on it. I certainly hope he will. And then he'll write the next part, and I'll write the next part. And so it's because we have the time and because it's complex, we that seems to be the best way to proceed in this case.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that one of the things we're very keen that people don't realize is because we don't say in which order these parts might be in, that which one of us possibly wrote it. So the aim of the exercise for us both is that, Mike will review my work, I'll review his, and we'll try and come up with some kind of amalgam balance in the
Hmm.
voice so that it runs naturally through, and then Mike's going to take the lead on the transitioning between the different pieces. But I think I mean, our outline for the story I told you when we last spoke it was exciting enough to want to do the project, but the actual complexities of the um, inner story is very Sherlockian. So I think that's kind of the reason why I was very much on board when Mike first began to sort of seed the idea.
What a fascinating experiment and craft to get to kind of mingle your voices together and to play off of each other in that way. I'm thinking about like a musical analogy here of trying to get the instruments harmonizing or something like that.
Mm, mm,
Mm. Well, it's like any relationship, you have to bring more or less equal
mm.
um, parts, more or less equal strengths to the project. We don't have the same strengths, but I know that I can I can rely on Chris to do a great job and hope that I that I don't let him down. Uh, but uh, but very often when collaborations don't work, it's because it's unequal. It's because one guy's pulling hard and the other one's kind of sure,
Right.
slacking off.
And maybe sometimes ego has something to do with that too. I think that for me it was, but I've worked, um, well, I mean, Mike and I we just discovered this very recently, have been friends 10 years now. And in
Happy
that period,
friendiversary.
thank you. And
Thank you.
in that period of time, we have developed the kind of friendship that allows for us to be able to work on projects together and be able to sort of almost we're past that point of negotiation. It's what do you think of this? Oh, I like that, but not this. Okay, what about this? And we actually do have a sort of nice running commentary on the stuff that we've done, and then we, sort of narrowed that down to the different parts. And then when Mike gave me the outlines that we had agreed, I expanded the outline of the piece that I was writing, sent that back, So it's been for me, it's been a good exercise because I've never, as I said, I've never collaboratively worked with anyone before. So I've only ever worked with my own ideas and pacing, and so yeah, it's been fun. I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we're doing it, and I look forward to doing it again.
Mhm. Right, right.
Yeah, I was going to ask as well about the influences on one another. Is there a particular takeaway that you have from having worked together on this and having been friends now for 10 years? Any sort of rubbing off that's happened?
Well, Chris is very passionate about Sherlock Holmes and very passionate about which Sherlock Holmes you model your character after.
Yes, absolutely.
He's a Jeremy Brett guy and I had seen a little of this and a little of that, and I really hadn't thought about which one is the authentic Holmes. Um, but this is a topic on which Chris is very passionate, and it was his passion that I appreciated the most. And so, as a guy who's written more than 80 books, you know, you try to bring your A game, right? You
Mhm.
try to bring it to everyone, but I think there were probably some B pluses in there. And but Chris is still so fiery and so adamant about certain homes, certain aspects of homes that inspired me.
But I do like the fact that we did decide that our book would be a sort of not a reset, but a minor reset in the whole. So that I was writing a slightly different variation of the Holmes and Watson characters that we were developing, rather than the ones that I had been. This really helped me because I write a lot of these things, and every now and then you can definitely start to get a little stale. Um, and so I try and reimagine every time I'm doing a piece. And in this instance, it was nice because I could let go of, right, I don't have to make the voice sound exactly like Jeremy Brett because that's not necessarily the direction this particular Sherlock Holmes is going, or the Watson needs to sound like this. So I had in mind a different ideas of the characters. And we had the same discussion because you, if I remember rightly, Mike, you had, when we were talking about the artwork, you had Jeffrey Hayes.
Jeffrey, yeah.
Yeah, he is a fan of Jeremy Brett's work too. And the clues in that cover are really just that if you look at the cane he's holding, it's Jeremy Brett's cane. It's the cane he had. But I remember we were discussing it, and Mike had him do it sort of almost to a Brett-esque look, and then we adjusted because we didn't want it to be exactly like that. So I like the characters, and the two characters I saw those characters before I wrote my piece, and they were definitely the model for my Holmes and Watson.
Yeah, we talk about the collaboration between Chris and me, but Jeff Hayes, the cover artist, is really another collaborator, another
Mhm.
kind of inspiration. And very often, when you see the cover, and this is true whether you're, independent publishing or publishing in a more traditional way, when you see the cover, it really nails things down for you. You go, oh yeah, that is important.
Mhm.
And maybe that other thing isn't. Yeah, that's what I had in mind. So a really good artist like Jeff will enhance the experience and also the final product.
And we're lucky because he gets it. Like he gets the whole genre. He knows the Holmes thing. He knows the kind of thing that we're trying to do. I think if I remember, you sent him the outline of it so that he could use that as a model. So he knew some of the stuff, and I think there was his intelligent pickings of that really showed through because Mike and I look at that cover and go, we know. But I like stuff like C did in to give you a little link here, a little link there, and I like to go back and seed more if I feel, they're needed and appropriate. And I think that's super important. I would say one thing that a piece of advice that I was given when I was first starting to look to publishing these Holmes books was from this gentleman here. And, that 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 piece of advice was really to take control of the character, to make sure that whatever you promise the reader at the beginning, you deliver on. And that's you start with a promise and then you spend that time and then you deliver on that promise. And if you have to go back to it, you know what I mean? Like you must bring it to full circle. And I thought that I've taken that advice to heart in everything I write. And I try to make sure that I deliver a full promise, you know, back again. And so that's my takeaway from working with Mike.
Writing a book, writing a novel is not that different from writing a joke. When you
Mm.
set up a premise, you got to pay off on it. And I do remember talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine that would be a challenge too with handling a licensed property of wanting to handle it delicately and maybe having to force yourself to deliver on that promise and to do things with the character to kind of expand and add your voice to it.
I think that's the key thing. That last thing you said is, I mean, everything you said was good, but the last thing you said was really key for me. Adding our own voices to the piece is really important because there are a lot of people writing Sherlock Holmes stories out there. There are a lot of traditional Sherlock Holmes kind of pastiches. It's the place is full of them. So you have to kind of develop a voice that people are going to like, but not just that, but it's yours. It's distinctly yours. And I think what we've done with this is we've done that. We've managed to get a distinct voice that's a little different from what I've done before, and a little different from the couple of stories, the two or three stories that Mike has done. This is a sort of a growth for both of us, really, in that regard.
As someone who's familiar with the world of Sherlock Holmes, what you hope the project adds to, that might actually answer that question to that world. But anything else that you'd like to add on that of where this takes us in this universe?
I guess if there's one thing that's become my calling card with regard to Holmes, it's putting in historical tidbits,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, uh, things that people and things that turn up, um, societies and events that turn up in the Holmes time frame, like Jumbo the elephant.
Mhm.
Not what you'd expect, but um, it kind of gives, I think, a richness to the story and an authenticity. So we do that. We do that in at least a couple of ways in the course of this manuscript. You will see Holmes doing things you just didn't expect him to do. In one of the stories I did for one of Chris's anthologies, I have Holmes playing handball. Now I'm a handball aficionado, so I knew something about it, but it turns out that there were courts in London and people paid to watch, and there were prizes, and it was authentic, and it was something that no one had ever done before with Holmes. So I think we will be doing that sort of thing in this book.
I liked that concept right away the first time I saw it. The whole he's still doing an investigation. He's undercover in a certain way, but it not in the way you expect. And I liked the way that it played out. I liked the way that in our investigations we've without giving anything really away, we've just taken some of these original characters that we know, these inspectors, Bradstreet, for example, or maybe Lestrade or Gregson, but we've just tweaked them a little bit to make them less likely to be seen as bumbling idiots. They're not. They're police
Mm.
officers. They've made it to this far because they have skills and so on. And we've been very careful to make Sherlock Holmes seem, the super intelligent, clever man rather than dumbing everyone down around him. I think that's a takeaway because I've been pretty fastidious about that. But going back to the one thing that Mike was like, we definitely like to have realism in there. I've become very like knowledgeable on 19th century police procedures and so on. So that's become a bit of an interesting hobby, but it helps because I got a lot of that. And also procedures for doctors as well. We have tried to make Watson seem a little bit more like a medical doctor. So he will use dialogue that's a little bit more related to the more medical side. And we've also used his intelligence to aid Holmes rather than just to feed in. If I'm
Yeah. One of the things that Chris impressed on me right away with his Watson Chronicle work was that Watson was not a bumbling idiot. Watson was a intelligent man. He was a doctor, and while he's not quite in step with Holmes, because who is he's at least as intelligent as the other people in the novel. So
Mm.
um, Holmes, I mean, Watson is a full participant in what goes on, and he's also the intelligence through which you see the story develop. And and he's an author, by the way, and that's something that comes out in the course of the story. He is an author,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's fun to play with as well.
I really do enjoy that kind of, that there's a running joke I've had a little few times in some of my Watson Chronicles. I just make it where Holmes says, "My name is Sherlock Holmes. Perhaps it's familiar to you," and the other person says, "No, I've never heard of you." And then he turns to Watson and said, "Oh, not a big reader then." So, and I like that joke, and I've used it a few times. So, I mean, but
Yeah.
it is because it's fun. It's true because certainly by a time like say, and I think we try and look at different aspects of the Holmes period from the 1880s right away sort of through to a different time, and so we get to look at each part of that relationship and where it would take them, and how that would be later on, and I think that's important too, to recognize that 1880s Watson and Holmes is not the same as 1900 or 1895, because their relationship is different.
I I think every writer writes what he or she would like to read. And I think that's very true here. We're we're writing a story that we would love to read,
Mm.
and so that's I and it feels right, and it feels like it's moving along as it should, and I think uh, I'm really looking forward to seeing other people read it.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
we've
yes.
been talking about it so much and putting so much into it, but I'm really looking forward to people's reaction to it.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a very it's gonna be a big because people don't usually buy Sherlock Holmes novels, right? It doesn't always work. Even Conan Doyle found that was very hard to do. So we were aware of that most of these are novellas or short stories previously. Even the ones that were published as novels were really novellas. But we were aware of that because this is quite a big prose novel. I mean, we are going to hit a decent size page count on this one. And I think it's important that people know that there is enough in there to keep you so entertained, but not just that, to take you along on a really interesting, twisty journey that you would really want to be on if you were on the back end of the cab while they were inside talking, so that you could see where it was going, but also hear what they had to say. I mean, that's where you want to be, right? And that's
Mhm.
that's where I think we're going to take you.
Mm.
Great metaphor. Put that on the poster. Absolutely. If I'm a listener and I want to find out more, where might I go to do that, to support, to find out about the two of you? Any spaces that you'd like to mention?
Well, primarily we have a Kickstarter campaign going that goes through February 12th, and we're probably two-thirds of the way funded after about 6 days, I think it is. So we're doing well, but you never rest, in the course of a Kickstarter campaign, you never rest until, they ring the final bell. And we're hoping that not only will it fund, but that we will be able to achieve some stretch goals on behalf of our supporters. And we've got some lovely ones. So this is because it's a Kickstarter, it only happens if you reach your goal. If you come a dollar short, then the campaign fails.
All or
So
nothing.
Yeah. So please, if you're listening and you're interested in Holmes or interested in Chris, or God help you, interested in me, then please check out the campaign for the Southwark Stigmata.
Yep.
Pretty good, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Very
Sub
And check that out, and please think about contributing.
And you can get hold of us on like crazyapepress.com.
Mhm.
I think there's links to us on there and so on. And then and if you just write Michael Jan Friedman in Google or Christopher D. Abbott, we come up pretty much the first, and that'll give you links to our websites and so on.
Right.
Wonderful, wonderful. Glad to have you both on. May the conversation continue. May the collaboration continue. And I will be going in just a few moments and supporting the book, which is not something I just say for the sake of the show, but
Oh, thank
something
you.
I will do. Absolutely. Many thanks and glad to have you back anytime.